Christmas Eve was just around the corner when I stood in the kitchen, pulling a tray of cookies from the oven, and the phone rang. My son David's voice cut through me like a knife. "Mom, this year it'll just be Emily's family for Christmas dinner. We want something more intimate." The words froze me in place, my hand trembling on the receiver as tears welled in my eyes. 69 years of life, 42 of them spent raising that boy. And this was what I got in return, dismissed like some old piece of furniture in the way. "You mean only Emily's family?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. My daughter-in-law, Emily, had been scheming this for years. I'd caught the whispers in David's ear at family gatherings, the sideways glances full of disdain, as if I were too foolish to notice. "Mom, it's just that Emily wants to make it special for Jacob." "You know Jacob, he's 8 now, your grandson." The one who used to run into my arms shouting, "Grandma," every time we met. The one who begged me to tell him bedtime stories. My heart shattered into pieces, and yet, strangely, a smile tugged at my lips. "All right, son," I replied, surprising even myself with the calm joy in my voice. David paused, clearly expecting sobs or desperate pleas. "Really, Mom? You're not upset?" His voice carried confusion, even disappointment. "Not at all, sweetheart. Go enjoy yourselves." I hung up with a peace I hadn't felt in years. Because what David didn't know, what no one in that family knew, was that 3 days earlier I had signed the papers on a mansion by the ocean in Miami. Price tag, $15 million. A home I had been watching quietly for months, waiting for the perfect moment to make it mine. To them, I was still the poor old woman in the tiny apartment, dependent and fading. In reality, I had been tending to investments they couldn't even dream of. I had swallowed my pride for years. I had endured Emily's sly hints about how families sometimes needed their own space. I'd heard the pitying laughter when I showed up to dinner in that moss-green dress I'd worn for 3 years. I smiled through being seated at the far end of the table, away from the important conversations. I pretended not to hear Emily on the phone with her friends. She doesn't get that she's too old for this stuff. But something changed in me that day. Maybe it was the coldness in David's voice. Maybe it was the sting of realizing my own son would humiliate me over the phone instead of facing me in person. Or maybe it was simply time. Time to stop being the silent victim in my own family. That evening, sipping coffee and watching the golden keys to my new mansion glint on the table, I knew exactly what I had to do. The house had 8 sprawling bedrooms, an infinity pool stretching toward the horizon, a living room big enough for 50 people, high ceilings with heavy beams, floor-to-ceiling glass looking out over a private beach, gardens manicured to perfection. Everything about it defied the image my family had boxed me into. While they fussed over their cozy dinner, I began planning the most spectacular Christmas they would ever witness. That night, lying in bed, I relived every slight. Every birthday party for Jacob that Emily deliberately forgot to invite me to. Every time David handed me a couple $100 with that pitying smile, as if I were a child begging for allowance. Every time I was cropped out of a family photo because they claimed they'd taken enough already. Each cruelty, small but sharp, had stacked up over the years like drops of poison. But now I had the power to rewrite the story. And the best part? They wouldn't see it coming until it was far too late. They thought they held the pen to my fate, but I was the one writing the ending. The obedient, long-suffering woman had died with that phone call. From the ashes, someone new was rising. The next morning, I did something I hadn't dared in years. I drove straight to David and Emily's house without calling first. I needed to see their faces, to hear their excuses for cutting me out of Christmas. I rang the bell of their 2-story home, the same house I had helped pay for when David lost his job 5 years ago. Emily opened the door, irritation plain on her face. "Mrs. Sandra, we weren't expecting you." Her voice dripped like she had stepped in something foul. She didn't invite me in, just stood blocking the doorway as if I were some door-to-door salesperson. "Hello, Emily. I came to see Jacob and to talk about these Christmas plans." Reluctantly, she stepped aside. I caught the glance she shot at David, who shuffled out of the living room looking uneasy. "Mom, I already told you. This year we want something different." He couldn't meet my eyes. Jacob burst from his room shouting, "Grandma!" with that dazzling smile. But before he could reach me, Emily's hand stopped him. "Jacob, go finish your homework. Grown-ups are talking." His smile vanished. I sat on the sofa I had given them last Christmas, watching Emily settle opposite me with that cultivated air of superiority. "Mrs. Sandra, please understand this isn't personal. My family has traditions for Christmas Eve." Each word she spoke carried that patronizing tone, like she was lecturing a child. "And what traditions are those exactly that don't include me?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. She faltered, just for a moment. David shifted uneasily beside her. "Mom, Emily's family is more refined. Their Christmas dinners follow certain customs, you know." Emily smiled that false smile I'd always despised. "Exactly. My parents came from Europe. They have their own standards. We use crystal, serve foie gras, and imported caviar. It's a very formal affair." She gave me a long, measuring look, as though deciding whether my moss green dress could possibly pass her parents' aristocratic inspection. "I see," I said, heat rising in my cheeks. "So tell me, what is it about me exactly that isn't refined enough?" The question landed like a bomb. David coughed, tense. "Mom, that's not it. It's just, you're not used to that kind of party." Jacob tried once more to run to me, but Emily snapped first. "Jacob, didn't you hear me? Go to your room." Her voice was sharp, cruel, stamping her authority over the household. Jacob looked back at me, eyes apologetic, before disappearing. "You want to know what bothers me most, Mrs. Sandra?" Emily leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with malice. "It's that you always try to be the center of attention at family gatherings, telling old stories, demanding everyone's focus. My parents don't like that." The words slapped me across the face. David bowed his head in shame but said nothing. Encouraged, Emily pressed on. "And your gifts for Jacob, cheap trinkets. Last year it was a plastic toy that broke in 2 days. My parents are giving him a trip to Disney World. See the difference?" "Emily, enough," David started, but she silenced him with a glance. "No, David, it's time she heard it. Mrs. Sandra, we don't hate you. It's just, you no longer fit our lifestyle. Stories about coupons and discount shopping don't belong at our table. My parents will think less of us. And if you show up again in those second-hand dresses." Her eyes raked me with contempt. Don't get me wrong, humility can be charming, but only up to a point. David finally spoke, only to echo her. "Mom, Emily's right. Maybe this year everyone should celebrate their own way. You can stay home, watch TV, relax without the burden of a formal dinner." The betrayal in his words tore me apart. My son, the boy I raised alone after his father left, now telling me to spend Christmas alone, while they dined on foie gras and caviar. "And another thing," Emily added with a cruel smile, "you always eat too much at dinners. My parents value table manners. We don't want any awkward moments." Something broke in me then. Not just the exclusion, but the delight they took in humiliating me. I stood slowly, feeling every fiber of me transform. "I understand perfectly now," I said, my voice eerily calm. "Wonderful." Emily sighed in relief. "I knew you'd be reasonable. In the end, we all just want what's best for the family." Her smile beamed, as if she had solved everything. As I walked out the door, I heard Jacob crying in his room. David walked me to the door, at least feigning discomfort. "Mom, please don't take it personally." "Oh, of course, son. Nothing personal at all," I repeated, tasting the bitterness in the words. They had no idea how personal it was about to get. Walking toward my car, I felt the heavy weight of the mansion keys in my pocket, a promise of justice. That night, in my tiny apartment, I lifted the phone and began to dial. It was time to prepare for the grandest Christmas my family had ever seen. And this year, the only ones left out would be David and Emily. After the humiliation in their house, I opened the safe hidden behind my closet. Inside were all the papers my family had never laid eyes on: certificates of financial investments, fund statements, property deeds. For 15 years since Robert's death, I had played the poor, dependent widow. But the truth was far different. My husband had been smarter than anyone knew. Quietly, he had invested in tech stocks that were now worth a fortune. He had bought land in overlooked areas that later became projects worth tens of millions. When he passed, he left me not just his love, but a nest egg of $5 million that had been quietly growing ever since. Why had I kept it secret? At first, grief. I didn't want to face anything after losing the love of my life. Later, when I saw my family's true nature, I decided silence was best to see who loved me, not for money. And now, after years of enduring their humiliations, I had all the answers I needed. The $15 million mansion was only the beginning. I also owned properties in 3 other states, an investment portfolio bringing in more money than I could ever spend, and connections my family couldn't imagine. While Emily boasted of her aristocratic parents, I'd been dining with real estate tycoons and philanthropists, and no one in the family knew. The next day, I put my plan into motion. First, I called my sister Linda, who lived in another state and hadn't come to family gatherings in 2 years because of Emily. "Linda, it's Sandra. Do you have plans for Christmas?" Her voice brightened instantly. "Sandra, I can't believe you called. Honestly, I was going to spend it alone after what happened with Emily last year." "Forget that," I interrupted. "I'm inviting you to my new home this year, a celebration like nothing you've ever seen." I gave her the address, and I heard the shock in her voice. "Sandra, are you sure? This is one of the most luxurious neighborhoods on the coast." "That's right. You'll see when you arrive. All you need to bring is a nice dress and a festive spirit." Next, I called my cousin Mark, who I've always thought of as a brother, though David and Emily dismissed him because he works as a mechanic. "Mark, how about a different kind of Christmas this year?" Last year, Emily had sneered at him, mocking that he should wash his hands before touching her furniture. "You okay, Sandra? David called us to cancel Christmas, said you agreed. You didn't sound right." So, David had even used my name to disinvite them. How amusing. "I've never been better, Mark. I want you and your family at my Christmas celebration. There'll be a surprise no one will forget." I gave him the details, and his voice brimmed with disbelief. "Sandra, this address. Are you sure? This is where celebrities live. Trust me, Mark. Just dress sharp and get ready for the best Christmas of our lives." I went on. calling every uncle, aunt, cousin, and friend David and Emily had pushed aside for not being classy enough. The guest list swelled to 35 people, and that wasn't even everyone. In the days that followed, I stepped into circles my family had no clue about. I called Evelyn, my dear friend and director of a multi-million-dollar charity fund. "Evelyn, darling, would you like to come to my home this Christmas? I want you to meet my family." Evelyn knew my situation well and had offered to help more than once, but I always chose to handle things myself. "Of course, Sandra. At last your family will know about the contributions you've made to the foundation." I let out a quiet laugh. "Let's just say they're about to discover more than a few surprises about me. I also invited Anthony, my financial advisor, the man who had helped me multiply my fortune many times over. Anthony, I want you to meet my son David at Christmas dinner." "Are you finally going to tell him about the investments?" he asked, curious. "Something like that. I think it's time he learned who his mother really is." I reached out to Iris, too, my interior designer, the one who had transformed the mansion into a glittering Christmas castle. "Iris, I want you to document everything: photos, video, every detail of the night." Meanwhile, I kept up my ordinary life. I still went to the supermarket with coupons, wore old dresses, lived in my little apartment, but each evening I drove out to the mansion to oversee preparations. The garden glowed with thousands of golden lights reflecting across the infinity pool. The balcony overlooking the ocean was dressed in fresh garlands that cost more than Emily spent on clothes each month. David called me twice that week, maybe out of some late flicker of guilt. "Mom, are you all right? You sound so different." His voice carried a trace of worry I hadn't heard in years. "I'm wonderful, son. In fact, I've never felt better. Enjoy your fancy European dinner. Mom, if you'd like, you could come by for dessert with us. Don't worry about me, David." I cut in gently. "I'll have a Christmas to remember. Maybe the best one of my life." He hesitated. "Are you going somewhere, Mom?" I smiled, though he couldn't see it. "Enjoy your caviar and foie gras. I'll be exactly where I need to be." 3 days before Christmas, Emily called. "Mrs. Sandra, I hope you're not upset about the other day. I just wanted to be sure you understood it's for the best." Her voice dripped with false sweetness. "Not at all, Emily. In fact, I should thank you. You've helped open my eyes." I heard her sigh in relief. "Good. I knew you'd be mature enough to understand. After all, family is what matters most, right?" "Yes, family is what matters most," I echoed, silently thinking of the 35 guests who had already confirmed for my Christmas Eve celebration. The night before Christmas, I was at the mansion for the final walkthrough when Mark arrived early to help. His reaction was exactly what I'd hoped for. He froze at the gates, jaw-dropping at the marble fountain lit up in gold, the immaculate gardens, the grand home rising under the starlit sky. "Sis, whose house is this?" he asked as we walked the stone path. "Mine, Mark. All of it is mine." He stopped in his tracks. "Yours? How is that possible?" "It's a long story. Let's just say I've kept a few secrets." When we stepped into the living room, with ceilings nearly 20 feet high, a marble fireplace blazing, and windows looking straight out onto my private beach, Mark sank onto the Italian leather sofa. "I don't understand. Does David know about this?" "He knows nothing. And tomorrow night, when he sees the photos online, he'll realize he made the biggest mistake of his life." I pulled out my phone to show him the confirmed guest list. His eyes widened. "The entire family will be here except David, Emily, and Jacob." I watched realization dawn on him. "Sandra, that's exactly what they deserve." "That's right, Mark. exactly what they deserve. Christmas morning, I woke up in my little apartment one last time. I tried to cling to my old routines, but my heart was pounding with a joy I hadn't felt in decades. Around 10 a.m., David called, forcing cheer into his voice the way he always did when he felt guilty. "Merry Christmas, Mom. How are you doing?" "I'm wonderful, son. I'm actually preparing for a magical dinner." I wasn't lying. "Oh, you're going to Linda's?" His voice lightened, as if that explanation could wipe away his guilt. "Something like that. Linda will be there with many other very special people." I could hear Emily whispering in the background, probably asking what I'd said. "That's great, Mom. We'll have a lovely day, too." Emily's parents brought French champagne, $500 a bottle. Of course, he had to brag. "That's nice, David. I hope you enjoy it. As for me." This time, Emily grabbed the phone. "Mrs. Sandra, what exactly are you planning?" "I'll be spending Christmas with my family, the people who truly value me." The silence on the other end was delicious. "You mean at that little apartment?" I said exactly what I meant, Emily. "At my home." And I hung up, filled with a satisfaction I hadn't tasted in years. I knew that call would rattle them, but they could never guess what was coming. At noon sharp, I arrived at the mansion for the final preparations. Chef Philippe's team was already bustling in the Brat, grand kitchen, preparing a menu that made Emily's foie gras look like fast food. We had fresh lobster, Norwegian salmon, the finest beluga caviar, and a French chef with Michelin-starred experience. The aromas drifting through the house were divine. Iris had outdone herself with the decor. The great room looked like something out of a Christmas fairy tale. A tree over 14 feet tall glittered with Austrian crystal ornaments and thousands of tiny lights. The tables were set with fine porcelain, crystal goblets, and white orchids worth more than David's monthly salary. By 2 p.m., guests began to arrive. The first was Linda, stepping out of a taxi, her face as it stopped before the mansion was priceless. She stood frozen on the sidewalk, staring at the house like she couldn't believe her eyes. "Sandra, please tell me you're not in some kind of trouble." Those were her first words when I opened the door. "Quite the opposite, little sister. For the first time in years, I'm exactly where I belong." I took her hand and led her through the house. Each room left her more stunned than the last. "How is this possible? Since when do you have this kind of money?" We sat on the oceanfront balcony, raising real champagne, not the cheap knockoff Emily was surely serving. "Remember when Robert died 15 years ago?" She nodded. "My husband was smarter with money than anyone in the family ever guessed." I told her everything: the secret investments, the plots of land now worth millions, the tech stocks that had multiplied hundreds of times. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" she asked, still reeling. "Because I wanted to know who loved me for who I was, not for what I had. And the results speak for themselves." Mark arrived half an hour later with his entire family, his wife, 3 kids, and even his mother-in-law. Their reactions mirrored Linda's, only multiplied 6-fold. His kids, ages 15 to 22, immediately began snapping selfies in the gardens. "Aunt Sandra, this place is like a palace," the youngest daughter squealed. I laughed. "And you are my princes and princesses." My heart swelled at their genuine joy, so different from the cold calculation I'd endured from my own son's family. These children hugged me simply because they loved me, not because they wanted anything. As the afternoon wore on, the mansion filled with laughter, music, and stories. Each guest shared how David and Emily had gradually pushed them out of family gatherings. A cousin who works as a nurse recalled how Emily once hinted she shouldn't come straight from the hospital wearing scrubs. An 80-year-old neighbor, who had been like a second father to me after Robert died, admitted that last year David told him maybe it was time for the older generation to make room for new traditions. Each story cut like a knife, but also steeled my resolve. By late afternoon, as the sun dipped into the ocean and painted the sky in gold and rose, Evelyn arrived with a surprise gift, a professional photographer. "I thought you'd want to capture every moment," she said with a knowing smile. "I have a feeling this night will be historic." The photographer got to work, capturing laughter by the pool, toasts on the balcony, children running through the glowing gardens. Every frame documented the kind of Christmas David and Emily had lost through their arrogance and cruelty. Anthony, my financial advisor, arrived with his wife, a doctor. "Sandra, when you said you had an interesting family, I didn't realize there'd be this many people," he laughed, looking around at 35 guests. "Family is anyone who loves you unconditionally, Anthony, and as you can see, I'm very rich in that regard." As we enjoyed appetizers on the balcony, my phone kept buzzing. "David." I let it ring several times before I answered, putting it on speaker so Linda and Mark could hear. "Mom, where are you? I've been calling all afternoon." His voice was laced with panic. "I'm home, son, enjoying a wonderful Christmas with my family." "Home? I just went to your apartment." "You weren't there. The doorman said you left early and haven't returned." Joy swelled inside me knowing they were scrambling. "Mom, please, come back. Jacob's waiting for you. He's been asking all day." And so he dangled my grandson as bait. "Tell Jacob that Grandma loves him dearly, but I'm with people who truly value me." I could hear Emily in the background, her voice sharp with anger as her perfect plan unraveled. "Mrs. Sandra, this is Emily. I don't know what game you're playing, but it's ridiculous. Come back now and stop this drama." "Drama, Emily? This isn't a play. This is real life. And in real life, actions have consequences." "What do you mean?" David cut in, his voice trembling. For the first time, I heard fear in him. "It means, son, you chose who deserved to share Christmas with you, and I've chosen too." I ended the call right there. Linda looked at me, part admiration, part concern. "Sis, this is getting serious." "It's time it got serious, Linda. For 15 years I've swallowed humiliation, endured disdain, been treated like an afterthought in my own family. But that ends today." Mark raised his glass. "To Sandra, who showed us it's never too late to reclaim your dignity." Everyone echoed the toast. For the first time in years, I felt truly at home, surrounded by real love and respect. As the sun sank beneath the sea and the mansion lights glowed like magic, I knew the night was only beginning. The best was still ahead. When the party reached its peak, I began phase 2 of my plan. "Iris," I called to my designer, "post every photo and video on my social media. Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, everywhere. I want the world to see what a real family Christmas looks like." Iris nodded, smiling. The images were breathtaking, my mansion lit like a fairy tale castle, the dining table set like a Hollywood film, guests raising crystal glasses against the backdrop of the deep blue ocean. Each photo radiated wealth, joy, and, above all, genuine happiness. "These are going to go viral," Evelyn said, flipping through them. "Especially the one of you on the balcony, champagne in hand, sunset behind you. You look like a queen in her palace." And she was right. In the photo, I wore a champagne-colored gown, adorned with a jewelry set that once belonged to my mother-in-law, worth more than David's car. The first picture I posted was a wide shot of the mansion blazing with lights, captioned, "Celebrating Christmas with family, the ones who truly love me. Grateful for this life." Comments poured in instantly. Distant relatives, old friends, neighbors, all stunned by the splendor. Mark chuckled. "Check your phone, sis. The notifications are exploding." He was right. Every minute brought more comments and questions. "Where is this, Sandra? Is this really your house? It looks like a 5-star resort." I kept posting photos of the dining room, where we all sat around a massive table beneath a glittering crystal chandelier, dishes as refined as any Michelin-starred restaurant. My caption read, "Family together, 35 hearts beating as one. That is true wealth." By dinner, I turned my phone off, but it buzzed non-stop in my purse. When I finally opened it, there were 43 missed calls from David, 26 from Emily, and even 5 from Jacob using a friend's phone. Dozens of messages, shifting from confusion to desperation. "Mom, please tell me what's happening. Is that house really yours? Carla says it's impossible. We're worried. Please pick up." But the most telling were Emily's texts. "Mrs. Sandra, I don't understand why you're doing this. Why didn't you ever say you had money? David is a mess. We need to talk. Maybe I was wrong about Christmas. We can fix this. Too late, Emily. Far too late." By dessert, as we savored a flawless chocolate soufflé crafted by the French chef, I posted a video Iris had filmed of the dinner. The table was alive with laughter, toasts, joy spilling from every corner. Christmas with family, 35 people who chose to be by my side on that magical night. My gratitude for their love was endless. The video spread quickly through our relatives. Even those who hadn't spoken to me in years began sending messages. But what mattered most was the picture I held in my mind. David and Emily sitting together, watching every second of that video, finally realizing what they had truly lost. At midnight, as we all stood out on the balcony watching the fireworks I had arranged to close the evening, Jacob managed to call me from his best friend's phone. "Grandma, why aren't you here? I miss you so much." That little voice cut straight through my heart. "Sweetheart, I miss you too. But sometimes adults make choices, and choices come with consequences. Your parents decided I wasn't fancy enough for their party, but I just want you here. Mom's been crying all day and Dad's really angry. My love, one day when you're older, you'll understand. People who truly love us never make us feel like we don't belong." I heard Emily's sharp voice in the background. "Give me that phone right now." Then the line went dead. Just then, Iris came over with her laptop. "Sandra, you need to see this. Your photos already have more than 500 views in just 4 hours. Everyone's talking about the house, about you, about this incredible transformation." The notifications kept pouring in. Every new ping felt like another small victory. Mark sat down beside me, eyes on the fireworks. "Do you think David and Emily have learned their lesson yet? They've perhaps only seen the surface. Mark, tomorrow they'll find out who I really am, and that shock will be greater than anything they've seen today." Linda hugged me tight. "Sis, this is the best Christmas of my life, but I'm curious. What's tomorrow going to look like?" I smiled. "Tomorrow they'll come here, and when they step inside, they'll learn the most important lesson of their lives." As the last sparks faded from the sky, I knew I had gained more than revenge. I had reclaimed my dignity, reunited with those who truly loved me, and proved that respect is never begged, for it is claimed. That night had been perfect, but the real play had only just begun. The next morning, December 26th, I woke in the master suite of the mansion, in a king-sized bed facing the ocean. For the first time in years, I felt genuine peace. Linda had slept in one of the guest rooms. I found her on the balcony, sipping coffee as she watched the waves. "Good morning, millionaire sister," she teased with a grin. How does it feel to be the most powerful person in the family? It feels like justice, Linda. Pure justice. We enjoyed the breakfast the chef had left for us: croissants, fresh fruit, and eggs, Benedict that looked like artwork. Around 9 a.m., my phone rang from an unfamiliar number. "Hello, Mrs. Sandra? This is Patricia, Jacob's friend's mom. Sorry to call so early, but David and Emily showed up here at 7 a.m., asking if we knew where you were." I almost laughed. They were desperate enough to bother the parents of their son's classmates. "And what did you tell them?" "Well, last night I saw your photos on Facebook. That house is unbelievable. The parents at school can't stop talking about it. But David and Emily seemed frantic. They kept saying they had to find you. Just tell them I'm fine, and when I want to see them, I'll be the one to reach out." I hung up, a delicious thrill running through me. Their desperation game had officially begun. Over the next 30 minutes, I got 5 more calls just like it from old neighbors, distant relatives, even Jacob's dentist. Clearly, David and Emily were pulling the whole world into their search. By 10 a.m., I unlocked my phone to check the full scope. 68 missed calls from David, 41 from Emily, and more than 200 text messages. At first, David's words read, "Mom, I don't understand. How do you own that mansion? Why did you hide that you're wealthy?" Emily is in shock. She didn't sleep all night. "Please talk to us." Then came Emily's messages, even more telling. "Mrs. Sandra, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Maybe I was a little blunt yesterday, but you know how I am. I don't get why you had to put on this spectacle instead of just being honest. David always said you were private about money, but this is ridiculous. Please respond. Everyone's asking about you and the house. Parents at school are calling non-stop." At 11 a.m., I posted another picture, me in a silk robe, sipping coffee on the balcony overlooking the sea. The caption read, "Waking up in paradise. When you remove toxic people from your life, all that's left is peace and joy." The response was immediate, dozens of comments within minutes. David left a shocked emoji, while Emily wrote, "Mrs. Sandra, please call us back. We're so worried." I didn't reply. By noon, Iris arrived with more news. "Sandra, you have to see this. Your story has gone beyond the family. One of your cousins shared the photos in a Facebook group with more than 10,000 members. Now the whole community is talking about the grandmother with the secret mansion." Sure enough, the images had gone viral. Hundreds of strangers commented, sharing their own experiences with toxic relatives and congratulating me on the perfect revenge. I had accidentally created an online sensation. Early in the afternoon, my phone rang again, this time from a private number. It was Jacob, crying. "Grandma, please come back. Mom and Dad are so upset. They keep saying you tricked them. I don't understand anything. I just want you home." My heart shattered hearing my grandson so confused. "Sweetheart, I never tricked anyone. I just kept quiet about some things. Do you remember when your mom said I wasn't classy enough for their party?" "Yes, and I told her that was mean, but she made me go upstairs." "That's right, darling. Sometimes adults have to learn hard lessons. But can you come back? It's awful here. Very soon, love." "I promise I'll see you soon." I hung up, tears streaming down my face. I never wanted to hurt Jacob, but he had been pulled into this storm too. At 2 p.m., as Linda and I were having lunch on the balcony, we heard the roar of an engine at the gates. "Here comes the cavalry," Linda whispered, half anxious, half excited. David's BMW sped up the drive, screeching to a stop. They stepped out, both looking wrecked. David was still in yesterday's clothes, like he hadn't slept at all. Emily's mascara was smeared. her hair a tangled mess, something I had never seen from her. They stood frozen for minutes, staring at the marble fountain, the manicured gardens, the towering columns, the sweep of the ocean view. Their mouths hung open, stunned. Finally, David walked to the gate and pressed the buzzer. His trembling voice came through the intercom. "Mom, I know you're in there. Please, we need to talk." I didn't answer right away. I let them wait 5 minutes while I slowly finished my champagne. "Who is it?" I asked at last. "Mom, it's me, David. I'm here with Emily. Please let us in." His voice carried a desperation I had never heard before. "David, what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be enjoying your fancy European dinner?" The silence on the line was heavy. "Mom, please. We need an explanation. None of this makes sense." "An explanation? About this house, the money? About how I supposedly deceived you all these years? I never lied. I simply didn't tell you everything, and those are two very different things." I heard Emily jump in, her voice sharp. "Mrs. Sandra, can you at least open the door so we can talk properly?" "Of course. But first, answer me this. Are you here because you truly want to see me, or because you saw the photos and suddenly remembered I exist?" The question hung in the air like a blade. "Mom, that's not it. We're confused. Why didn't you tell us you were rich?" "Because I wanted to know if you loved me for who I am, David. And now, I have my answer." Finally, I pressed the button to open the gate. They walked slowly up the stone path, eyes wide with disbelief. The woman before them was no longer the poor, dependent widow. They were facing a powerful figure in her own kingdom. When they reached the grand front doors, I opened them myself. I wore a striking red gown and the pearl necklace my mother-in-law had left me. The look on their faces was exactly what I had waited 15 years to see: shock, confusion, and for the first time in so many years, an involuntary flicker of respect. "Hello, David. Hello, Emily. Welcome to my home." My voice was steady, firm, commanding. "Come in. We have much to discuss." They stepped into the mansion, moving as if through a museum, eyes sweeping over the glittering crystal chandelier, the original paintings on the walls, the marble floors, the Italian leather furniture. To them, I must have seemed like a ghost, yet the ghost was real. "Sit down," I said, pointing to the sofa in the great room. They obeyed without a word. It had been years since I'd seen them so subdued. Normally, Emily would throw in some cutting remark, or David would try to control the conversation. But now, both were, stripped of all their power. "Mom, can you please explain what's going on? Is this house really yours?" David finally asked, his voice small, uneasy. "Of course it is, son. I bought it just last week, paid in full." The words "paid in full" made them both flinch. Emily, still staring out at the ocean, turned back with that calculating expression I knew too well. "Mrs. Sandra, I don't understand where you got this kind of money. Did you win the lottery and hide it from us?" I let out a soft laugh, the sound making them even more unsettled. "The lottery, Emily? No, this is much better. This is the result of planning, smart investments, and patience." I rose, walked to the window, and let the moment settle. "When Robert died 15 years ago, you all assumed I'd be left destitute. I remember the pitying looks at the funeral, the whispers about poor Mrs. Sandra, how she'd have to sell the house and scrape by on a small pension." David bowed his head, clearly remembering. What no one knew was that Robert had been a genius with money. For more than 20 years, he quietly bought tech stocks that everyone else dismissed, but he knew they would soar. He bought land in places people thought worthless, now worth tens of millions. Emily tried to cut in, but I silenced her with a look. I'm not finished, Emily. Robert left me not only his love, but a nest egg of $5 million, quietly compounding all these years. Now it has grown beyond 80 million. The air thickened. David looked like he'd been punched in the gut. 80 million, he whispered. And all this time you lived in a tiny apartment, clipped coupons, even borrowed money from me. That's right, son. For 15 years, I played the role of the poor widow, just to see who truly loved me and who only tolerated me as a burden. I sat down across from them, legs crossed with a grace I'd hidden for years. Emily frowned, her voice unsteady. Why would you pretend to be poor when you had all this money? Because I wanted to know the truth of people's hearts, and the results are crystal clear. David hunched forward, hands trembling. Mom, if we had known, we would have treated you differently. You would have treated me with respect. Emily would have stopped mocking my clothes and food. You both would have included me in your family plans instead of pushing me out. Emily flushed red. Mrs. Sandra, I didn't... Well, maybe sometimes I was a little blunt. Blunt? I stood up, feeling all the strength I had kept buried finally pour out. Emily, for 5 years you've treated me like I was a burden. You made me feel unwanted at every gathering. Last year you said my gift for Jacob was cheap and inappropriate. 6 months ago you hinted I shouldn't go to his school performance because the other mothers dressed better. Just last month you told me not to bring the dish I cooked to dinner because it didn't fit your refined menu. Each word landed like a bullet. I saw David freeze as the truth unraveled before him, truth his wife had never confessed. She really said that? His voice was sharp. There's more, son. Your wife said plenty when you weren't around. Emily jumped up, flustered. Mrs. Sandra, you're exaggerating. Maybe I was careless sometimes, but I never meant harm. Careless? I cut in, my voice unrecognizable even to myself. Emily, just 2 days ago you told me I wasn't refined enough to dine with your parents. You said my coupons didn't belong, and suggested I stay home and watch television alone on Christmas. David, you hear this? Your wife said that. David turned to his wife with a look I had never seen. Emily, did you really say that to my mother? Well, it was because my parents have certain expectations. Expectations like excluding my own mother from dinner? His words came out. Clipped, deliberate. For the first time in years, my son stood on my side, but it was far too late. David, I said calmly, don't be angry with Emily. She only revealed her true self, just as you did when you called to cut me out of Christmas without a thought to how I might feel. Mom, I thought you'd understand. Emily said it would be better this way. Emily said. Emily thought. Emily wanted. But what about me, David? When did you ever stop to consider your mother's feelings? I walked to the window, pointing toward the balcony and the sea beyond. Do you see that? Last night, 35 people shared Christmas dinner with me. They loved me enough to come, and not one of them made me feel worthless. Linda flew in from 3 states away. Mark brought his whole family, neighbors, cousins, even people I hadn't seen in years. They came for one simple invitation. You know why? Because love and respect don't require wealth or mansions. Emily began to cry, but not the tears of a victim, tears of someone finally realizing the weight of her own cruelty. Mrs. Sandra, I'm sorry. If you had told us. But I didn't tell you, Emily, and that was the point. I wanted to see how you'd treat me when you thought I had nothing. David rose and came closer. Mom, I know you're angry. We deserve it, but we're still family. We can make this right. Family, David? Yesterday, when you called to cut me out of dinner, family didn't seem to matter much. You say it was a mistake, a terrible one, but I waited 15 years for one moment when my son would defend me, and it never came. My voice trembled, revealing the wound beneath. Now you're here, not because you see me as worthy of respect, but because you discovered I have money. Don't you see the difference? Emily stepped forward, eyes red. Mrs. Sandra, you're right. I treated you terribly. I have no excuse. But Jacob needs you. He doesn't understand why you vanished. It was her final card, using my grandson as an emotional shield. Jacob needs me, Emily. But he also needs to grow up in a family that teaches respect and true values. And you two still have much to learn. I turned toward the door. This conversation ends here. Come back when you're ready to apologize, not because you found out I have money, but because you finally understand what respect means. I left them sitting in the living room, facing the ruins of their own arrogance. In the days that followed, David and Emily didn't give up. In fact, they tried harder in ways I never expected. On the second day, David came alone, without Emily, wearing a face I hadn't seen in years, one of genuine humility. Mom, I know I have no right to ask for anything after what we've done, but you should know I haven't slept. I just lay awake, replaying every moment I failed as your son. His eyes were red, and for the first time in years, he looked as vulnerable as when he was a boy. Come in, David, I said, but this time you enter my house on my terms. I led him to the balcony where I usually had my morning coffee. Would you like a cup? I poured it into fine porcelain, letting him take in every detail of the luxury he had seen before but never understood. Mom, I have to ask something, and please answer honestly, he said, sitting straight as if at an interview. All these years, did you ever feel I truly appreciated you, not out of duty, but as a person? The question caught me off guard with its sincerity. David, there were beautiful moments. When you were born, when you were little, when you needed me. But in recent years I struggled for words. I felt you endured me rather than cherished me. David buried his face in his hands. Mom, I've become someone I don't even recognize. I let Emily decide everything, even about you, and I never defended your place in our lives. That's unforgivable. And Emily? I asked, curious how she reacted now. She's a mess. She's been crying since yesterday, saying she feels like the worst person alive. But honestly, Mom, I don't know if her tears are for the pain she caused you or because she lost her chance at your wealth. His bluntness surprised me. And you, David? Are you here out of true remorse, or because you now know I'm not the financial burden you thought? Both, he admitted without hesitation. I hate to say it, but it's the truth. I'm here because it hurts to realize how cruel and blind I've been, but also because I'm terrified I've lost forever the one person who loved me unconditionally. At least you're honest. I leaned back, eyes on the waves crashing against my private shore. David, for 15 years I waited for the day you'd realize you were losing me, but it took a mansion and a fortune for you to see. You're right, and that makes me the worst son. His voice broke. Mom, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. It may be too late to undo the hurt we caused, but please believe I regret every moment that made you feel less than cherished. And Jacob, David, how do you explain this to an 8-year-old? Tears blurred my vision. That's the hardest part. He doesn't understand why you disappeared. He asks me every day. Yesterday he said, Dad, why doesn't Grandma want to see us anymore? My voice cracked. That child is innocent of his parents' mistakes. I know, Mom. I told him sometimes adults make terrible mistakes and it takes a long time to fix them. Just then my phone rang. It was Linda. You okay? I saw David's there. I'm fine. We're having the talk we needed. Good. Just so you know, Mark called me. The whole family knows now, and they're all on your side. When I hung up, David's face was full of questions. The whole family knows? David, don't you see? For years they've watched Emily treat me with contempt. They heard the snide remarks, saw how you two slowly cut me out. This isn't about money. This is about justice. I told him what Mark had said when Emily mocked him about washing his hands before touching furniture, how Linda was deliberately left off the guest list, how a cousin had been told not to bring her kids because they were too noisy. David paled at each example. I didn't know. Emily never told me, probably because she knew it was wrong. Exactly, David. But she still did it. Convinced her influence over you was stronger than your loyalty to your family. Mom, is there any way you can forgive us? Any way to earn back your trust? His voice pleaded. Forgiveness doesn't come with one apology. It must be proven with time, with actions. What must we do? First, you must understand this house isn't just a mansion. It is the true presence of who I am, the woman you never bothered to know. Second, you must accept that Jacob deserves to know who his grandmother really is. A strong, wealthy, generous woman, not the distorted image you created. Third, you must promise to treat everyone with respect and dignity, no matter what they have. True refinement isn't bought in Europe, David. It's shown in how you treat those you think have nothing to give you. David moved closer. Mom, I know I have a long road ahead. It may take years to rebuild your trust, but I'll do everything. And Emily, she must decide for herself what kind of person she wants to be. But I promise, never again will I let anyone, not even my wife, disrespect you. There's one more thing you should know, David. I smiled, something I hadn't done in years. This house isn't just mine. Half of it will belong to Jacob one day, as written in my will, but he'll only inherit it if he grows into a man who is kind and respectful, just as I believe he can be. David's eyes widened. You're leaving him millions? Yes, but more importantly, I'm leaving him a lesson. The true worth of a person isn't in what they own, but in how they treat those they love. David broke down in tears. After all this, you're still thinking of Jacob's future? I always think of him, son. The difference now is that I have the means to ensure he grows into an extraordinary man. He nodded softly. We'll bring Jacob to see you. He misses you so much. Fine. But under one condition. When he comes here, he must know who his grandmother really is. A businesswoman, a philanthropist, a woman of means. I will not let him grow up believing that age means weakness or that money defines worth, David whispered. Whatever you say, Mom. Then he hugged me, for the first time in years. In that embrace, I saw the spark of the little boy I once raised with all my love. There's still hope, son. But hope requires real effort, not just words. When David left that afternoon, I sat on the veranda, watching the sun sink into the ocean, reflecting on it all. I had gained more than revenge. I had reclaimed dignity, delivered lessons, and opened the door to reconciliation built on mutual respect. Most of all, I had proved that it is never too late to rise, to demand the treatment you deserve, and to remind the world who you truly are. 3 months after that fateful Christmas, I sat in my office at the mansion, reviewing the plans for the charitable foundation I had decided to create. From my mahogany desk, the endless ocean reminded me that life can change completely when you find the courage to stand up for yourself and claim your worth. Since January, Jacob had visited nearly every weekend. The first time he came after the reveal, as the family called it, he stood frozen for 10 minutes, staring around in awe. "Grandma, is all this really yours?" he asked, wide-eyed. "Yes, sweetheart. And one day, if you grow into the kind, generous man I know you can be, part of this will be yours." I explained in terms a child could understand. Money is only a tool to do good, not something to boast about or to use to belittle others. With the clear wisdom only children have, he grasped it immediately. "Why didn't you tell us sooner, Grandma?" he asked as we built sandcastles on my private beach. "Because I needed to know who loved me for me, Jacob, and now I finally do." During those 3 months, David kept his word. He worked tirelessly to repair our relationship, not with expensive gifts or grand gestures, but with the small, heartfelt actions I hadn't felt in years. He called me every day, not to ask for anything, just to check in and see how I was doing. He even came over alone, without Emily, to have real conversations with me about life, about his mistakes, and his desire to become a better man. "Mom, I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened," he said one afternoon as we sat in the library, surrounded by shelves of books I had collected over the years. "I realized that for so many years I stopped seeing you as a person. I only saw you as Mom, like that was all you were. But you're so much more than that. That's the mistake so many people make, son. They forget that parents had entire lives before they became parents, and they still have dreams, ambitions, and their own personalities." David smiled, really smiled for the first time in years, not the forced grin I had grown used to. "I want to know that person, Mom. I want to know Sandra, the woman who built all of this, yet stayed humble enough to clip coupons at the grocery store." Emily was another story. In the first weeks, she tried to reach me with desperate apologies, mixed with remarks that showed she still didn't fully grasp the depth of her mistakes. "Mrs. Sandra, I know I was harsh with you, but I didn't think you would take things so seriously," she once said in a call that left me sighing. "Emily," I replied with the patience that years of meditation on my porch had taught me, "the problem isn't that I took things seriously. The problem is that for 5 years you tried to turn me into an invisible person in my own family." But slowly, I began to see small changes in her. Maybe it was from watching David transform, or maybe from realizing she had chosen the wrong side. Emily started sending kinder messages, recalling good memories we once shared, apologizing for cruel words she now admitted were heartless. "Mrs. Sandra, I've started therapy," she confessed during her first visit to the mansion that February. "My therapist helped me understand that my behavior came from my own insecurities. For the first time, I saw true vulnerability in her. The problem, Emily, is that you tried to make yourself feel better by making me feel worse. That will never be the solution." I poured tea into my porcelain set, noticing her eyes linger on every detail of the house with a mix of admiration and regret. "I understand now," she whispered. "I know it will take years to earn your forgiveness, but I want you to know I'm committed to changing, not just for you, but for Jacob. I don't want my son growing up thinking it's okay to mistreat people." The most beautiful change, though, came from Jacob. He slowly began to understand the deepest lesson of all this. One afternoon, as we walked through the gardens, he said, "Grandma, now I understand why you always told me to be kind to everyone at school, even the kids who didn't have nice toys." I smiled and asked, "And why is that, sweetheart?" "With the innocent clarity of a child," he answered, "because we never know who's truly special inside. Like you. I thought you were just my normal grandma, but really you were a superhero all along." I hugged him, my throat tight. "That's right, Jacob. And most importantly, everyone deserves kindness, whether they have money or not, whether they have power or not. That's what true refinement really is." By then, my story had spread far beyond the family. Evelyn shared my experience in businesswomen's groups, and I began receiving dozens of messages from older women who had faced being overlooked in their own families. One letter in particular brought me to tears. It was from a 74-year-old woman in rural Kansas. "Dear Sandra, your story gave me the courage to finally tell my family about the company I started 20 years ago. For 2 decades I pretended to be just a retired old woman, when in truth I built a 6-figure business. Your strength inspired me to reclaim my identity." With Anthony's help, I established the Dignity and Respect Foundation, focused on supporting older people who had been pushed aside by their families. Our first project was a program to help grandparents reconnect with grandchildren who had been kept away by toxic parents. "You know what the most beautiful part of all this is, Mom?" David asked me during a dinner at the mansion last month. It was the first real family meal with David, Emily, and Jacob, and it had been perfect. "What is it, son?" I asked. "You didn't just teach a lesson about respect. You taught us that it's never too late to change your life, to stand up, and to demand the treatment you deserve." Emily nodded, tears streaming down her face. "And more importantly," I added, watching Jacob building with blocks on the floor, "we're teaching him that true power doesn't come from money, but from integrity, kindness, and the determination never to let anyone make him feel less than he is." That night, after they left, I stepped out onto the veranda and gazed at the stars reflecting in the infinity pool. I thought about the journey since that phone call that had changed my life. What began as exclusion and humiliation had become a story of strength and redemption. I realized the real revenge isn't hurting those who hurt us, but living so well, so authentically, with such power that their own behavior becomes their greatest shame. I didn't need to destroy David and Emily. Their awareness of what they had lost was punishment enough. I had regained not just my dignity, but my identity. I was no longer just the poor old grandmother or the dependent widow. I was Sandra, a businesswoman, a philanthropist, a woman who had built an empire in silence and used it to teach the most important lessons about humanity. As the waves gently broke on my private shore, I smiled, thinking of all the people who had been inspired by my story. If my experience could give even one grandmother the courage to reclaim her dignity or inspire one family to treat their elders better, then every year of endurance had been worth it. At 69, I had learned that it is never too late to rewrite your story, to show the world who you truly are, and to teach the people you love what really matters. And that, more than any mansion or fortune, was the most valuable legacy I could ever leave. Life had taught me that respect is not something you ask for, it is something you claim and demand. Sometimes the most powerful lesson you can give is simply to live so magnificently that your very existence proves everything they once underestimated. That night, I slept deeply in my king-size bed, lulled by the sound of the ocean, with the peace of someone who had achieved what so few ever do, a second chance to live fully as herself, surrounded by the love and respect she had always deserved. Maybe every family has cracks, misunderstandings, moments when we hurt one another without even realizing it. But I believe it's in those very moments that we have the chance to grow, to learn to cherish, and to choose love over judgment. I tell this story not just to speak about myself, but to remind you that each of us can rewrite our fate, can reclaim our voice and our place in this life, and sometimes the change within us is what inspires change in those around us. And what about you? Have you ever felt dismissed in your own family? Or do you have a lesson about respect and love that you'd like to share? Leave it in the comments because your story might be the comfort and inspiration someone else needs. And if you'd like to continue this journey with me, don't forget to follow along so we can meet again in the next stories, where each of us might find a piece of ourselves.